Okay, again, this session is being recorded. I'd like to say good morning and appreciate you joining us for the Small Business Workshop, Navigating the Headwinds of Crisis. This particular session will be focused on financial resources, support, and sustainability. And we have a special presenter, Mark Baker from Fifth Third Bank. And before we get started, I also want to thank all of our sponsors. I'd like to thank Fifth Third Bank, Comcast Business, and also the Detroit Development Fund. And we also have a host of partners that have been engaged as well. So thank you very much for your participation. We appreciate you joining us. And this will be a very worthwhile conversation as we continue to focus on navigating the headwinds of crisis. I am very pleased to turn it over to Mark Baker and for this particular discussion. Mark?
Great, thank you so much. Let me share my screen, just double check and make sure you can see my screen. Are you able to see it?
Yes, we are. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect, just double checking. All right, as Mark said, I am Mark Baker, and I am the business banking market executive for Fifth Third Bank in Eastern Michigan. So Eastern Michigan for us includes all of the region on the east side of the state, east of Lansing, from the Ohio line up to the Mount Pleasant area. So kind of the Eastern Michigan thumb area, that thing. So it's really my privilege to be able to lead that team. We've got some tremendous professionals on that team, and I'm really excited about that. I've been in financial services for 25 years, primarily in banking. I did spend 6 years kind of in the middle of my banking career working for a private company on the client side of the table, working across from financial partners. So I do feel like I can bring some additional perspective from both sides of the table, both as a financial professional and also on the client side, working through the sets of issues with that. I also, and this is probably more pertinent for today's discussion, I do have a background working for economic development organizations. So couple of the things that I've done in my career are worked with local organizations like Ann Arbor Spark, the Michigan Pre-Seed Capital Fund, the Grow Michigan Fund, Automation Alley, and other experience working with entrepreneurs. And this is something that really I have found my passion and my purpose for. I'm really excited for this morning to be able to talk to each of you and to talk about how we can have the best conversations possible, and also how we can put you in a position with skills and experiences so that you can have the best success that you can have. As I go to the next page, we're talking about today's objective. I always want to make sure that we are laser focused on our use of time. This is really important stuff, but even more importantly than that, you have chosen to invest your time this morning with us, and I want to make sure we put that to our best use. So today's objective is, by the end of the session, that you will gain the skills, the strategies, and the perspectives to access capital and to work with resource partners to advance your business goals. I want to add this perspective to this. Finance is much more than just a profit scoreboard. A lot of times we think of finance, we think of accounting, really as, maybe a necessary evil and administrative task. It's got a lot of math, so maybe we don't like to do that. But I want you to add this perspective. This is where you can have the ability and the sense of control in how you run your business and how you talk to those sources of capital. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that. Now, the outline for today. So we're going to cover 5 specific topics. One of them, build a financial team. So the team are those people who surround you to help you financially. Talk about that. Second thing, develop a financial platform. So that's a really kind of broad and general term. Specifically, it's the system that helps you operate and make decisions. Then we're going to talk about creating a financial strategy. And the financial strategy is the money plan that helps you achieve your objectives. So you think about it, you have a general strategy, maybe an operational strategy, but then specific to that is a financial strategy. Fourthly, we'll talk about evaluating, revising, and refining your team, platform, and strategy. So those first 3 points, the team, the platform, the strategy, we're going to talk about how we use that as a process of improvement to go back and reevaluate and revise those as necessary. Then the fifth thing is really more of the kind of wrap it all together and implement it into what you do, is being able to articulate key financial topics well for capital and resource partners. So again, that's the ability to communicate important concepts from a financial standpoint. So I use a couple terms there, capital and resource partners. What are those? So capital, that's the easy part. When we talk about capital partners, it's those people that have maybe grants, loan, economic development money, anybody that provides money for you to do what you need to do. So the capital part, I think, is pretty straightforward. Then the resource partners, what do I mean by that? So resource partners are those people and organizations who bring information, expertise, counsel, connections, guidance, and other non-monetary resources to help you. So there are many people, and one thing that we will send out after this session is a list of organizations in our area, in the state of Michigan, that help do that. Some of them are solely focused on capital. Some of those are solely focused on resource partners, so the resources that we have that I just explained, and some of them kind of cross over and do a little bit of both. So we'll give you those with that. So let's jump in to the first topic, which is build a team. First thing I want to say is everybody's mic is muted, just because with the number of people that we have on the call, we want to make sure that we have kind of that clarity. But we also want to make sure that we do address questions, comments, anything that you have. So please send those questions to the chat, and we'll leave time at the end to make sure to address those. I'll do periodic reminders of that as we move through the topics. But again, please remember, send the questions to the chat, and Mark and Jennifer will arrange those, and we will be able to address those. So starting on building a team. Again, the definition of that, the people who surround you to help you financially. I want to say this, first and foremost, this does not mean that you have to go out and hire a high-cost CFO. You don't need to do that. Matter of fact, you might not have to hire anybody at all, because there are people and resources that can help you to build that team and be on your team. So what do you need to focus on? You do need to focus on adding these key areas to your team. So the people that you're going to surround yourself with need to have these characteristics. One, diversity of thought. Don't fall into the trap of uniformity. You want to challenge yourself to make sure that you have all of the best thinking around you, and make sure that you challenge yourself by surrounding yourself with people that don't think like you do. If they do think like you think, they're unnecessary. That's redundant. We want to make sure that we challenge ourselves to think more broadly, to think more deeply in certain areas, and to really add skill sets. Next thing, experience. Add experience to your team. So don't reinvent the wheel. If there is someone out there that you can bring onto your team that has been through something before and has experience, use that so that you don't have to do that. Lean on others who have already gone up the learning curve for you. Another thing to make sure to focus to add to your team are important skill sets, especially where you are lacking. So within your business, within your own skill set, what are the important things that you need to have as far as a skill set? Make a list of those skills. Think about people that you surround yourself with and how they can bring those skills to the table, particularly in areas where you might be lacking. Also, bring another key area, the ability to be constructive. So think about this. When you bring a team around you, you want to bring on people that not only have all those other things that we talked about, the diversity of thought, the experience, the important skill sets, certainly want to do those, but we also want to bring people that have an attitude and ability to help you be constructive. That is really key. Again, the idea of being challenged, but then having someone that can step up to that challenge with you to be constructive, to make change. Ask yourself if they can work with you to consistently and effectively affect change. That's really important. Also, as we build a team, think about this. Think about where do you get these folks? Think about your CPA. That's one area. Certainly, that's probably an easy one. Someone who helps you with your taxes, someone that you can ask those questions about. Think about other advisors, attorneys, consultants, economic development professionals. I have that on the list in front of you. Again, this list will be included with the presentation materials. People who and people who do it, many of whom and many organizations provide this at no cost. Again, I want to go back to the very first point that I made on the build a team topic is you don't have to go out and hire high-priced people to do this. There are resources available to you to do that, but I want you to think about this in a very strategic and intentional way to make sure that you execute this. So again, economic development professionals, think about industry veterans. Again, people who have the experience and who have been around the block maybe a couple more times than you have to add to your team. I'm going to add a bit of a shameless plug here, bankers. A good, strong banker can really be an asset well beyond any loans or checking accounts that you can do. Find those bankers. We have those on our team. We work every day to be those bankers for all of our clients, our prospects, and our community partners. The last thing I want to make as a key point here when you build a team, don't forget about yourself. Invest in yourself. Figure out where you need those skills and those particular skill sets to put yourself in the best position possible to execute. We're talking about finances now, but even thinking more broadly than that, how do we add skill sets within ourselves in order to operate not only financially, but operationally, strategically, all those things. Never forget to invest in yourself. Everybody wears many hats. Again, my time, working at a private company, that was one of the things that was not only thrilling, juggling all the things that we needed to do as a small business, but that was also one of the things that at times was daunting. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm wearing so many hats, I'm juggling so many things, I'm afraid I'm gonna drop, the thing that is absolutely key today, those things. So make sure to step back and invest in yourself. Again, any questions on these, please make sure to add it to the chat. We'll compile those and make sure to address those as we go forward. The next topic is developing a platform. So again, what does the platform mean? That means the financial system that helps you operate and make decisions. So again, from a financial platform standpoint, that is not just a profit scoreboard. It is much more than that. It is the way, the system that you set up to help you run your business and make decisions. This does not necessarily have to be an expensive ERP system. We work with many clients here at the bank that have really detailed, large, complex computer systems that help them run their companies. That's good. That you don't have to have that. One thing I would recommend is make sure that you have a solid accounting software. QuickBooks is very popular. I make no exact plug. It's just that is something that we see very frequently among the small businesses that we work with. Make sure you have a good accounting software package. But then when I talk about the platform, it's not just that. Think about, number one, what do you need to run your business to your best ability? What is it that you need to make great decisions? And then build a system around that. It can be, starting with an accounting software package, and then maybe you develop some spreadsheets on the side. So think about that. Key attributes of this financial platform are, one, get a clear picture of your business in a timely way. So that can be, as simple as a balance sheet, an income statement, an inventory listing, work in process, accounts receivable, account payable, those kind of things. Get a clear picture, but it can also be operationally. Where do things stand? Where does hiring stand? Where do your orders stand? Those kind of things. Again, there has to be a key attribute here. Get a clear picture of your business in a timely way. Understand your costs. That's another key attribute. Understand your costs, both direct costs. So how much does it take for you to get the material if you're selling, say, a product? What does it take for you to get it in? Maybe you make some changes to it. What does it cost to add to it? Look at all those costs. Also, indirect costs. So there's the direct piece, but also the indirect piece. How do you allocate your indirect costs? It could be customer acquisition costs, could be overhead, it could be rent, it could be so many different things. Make sure that you understand all of your costs. Then once you understand your costs, the next point on the slide is enable informed pricing decisions. How do you price what you do? Certainly there's a competitive side to that, but also I put these specifically in this order: cost first, pricing second. If you don't know your fully loaded cost structure, how can you ever make strong pricing decisions when you are talking about what it costs for your product, your service, whatever it is that you provide to your customers? There's a chronology there: cost first, pricing second. You can never make a strong pricing decision until you fully know your costs. Last thing, as far as the key attributes, give clarity in order to make strong decisions. We're running 1,000,000 miles an hour. We're doing 100 different things at any given time. We do need, though, to make some strong clarity within our financial decisions. And when we talk about developing a platform, that's something that needs to be a key attribute. Another thing, just in a general standpoint, it's important to identify, track, and manage your key metrics. So make sure that your financial platform is able to do that for you. Again, please send questions to the chat. That'll be an important thing so that we can talk about those later. Our next point here is creating a strategy. Create a financial strategy. Again, the definition of the strategy is the money plan that helps you achieve your business objectives. That's your financial strategy. Your financial strategy should support all parts of your overall operational strategy. They should be interwoven. They should be intertwined with one another in support of what they're doing. Make sure to include in your financial strategy short and long-term cash flow needs. So as we talk about the operational strategy and then the specific supporting financial strategy for that, make sure that you understand what the cash flow needs are. Think short. That could be a day, a week, a month. So think short term. What do we need in order to run our business in that shorter term? That's a little easier to do because it's right in front of us. It's near term. But also think longer term. Longer term might be 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Make sure that you have those settled, because what you really want to understand are the longer term implications of the short term decisions that you make. So make sure to include in your financial strategy short and long-term cash flow needs and how they interrelate. Also within your financial strategy, think about a sensitivity analysis to track how key performance drivers change. They can go up, they can go down. I list some here on this page. Sales, what happens when sales increases? What happens when it decreases? Your costs, again, think through what happens. Payment terms, sometimes they get shorter, sometimes they get longer. That applies both on our side as far as when we source something and we have payment terms from the vendors that we use, but that also includes payment terms from the customers that we deal with. What kind of payment terms are we allowing? Do we allow discounts? What happens if they stretch us? Those kind of things. Think through the sensitivity up or down, how those things work. If you need to buy capital equipment, if you need to do hiring, expansion, new product lines, anything else that has a material impact on your business, think through those things. Some of the keys here are: what are the key drivers of your business and what happens if those key drivers change? You need to know that. You need to dig in and understand that. That's part of being in control and having a sense of control for your business, is being prepared when things happen. In your strategy, also learn where your best success is. So your best success, that does not necessarily mean just where your greatest profit is. So don't limit your thinking to that. It's important to make profit. That is part of what makes us sustainable. It's part of how we feed our families, those kind of things. That is important, but that's not the only factor. Think about the customer experience. In your financial strategy, how does that support the customer experience? How do we figure out where that customer experience and that best customer experience lies? Think about your efficiency. Again, in your financial plan, make sure that you learn and you have the tools to know and understand where your best efficiency is. Not only orient your strategy, to your best success. And again, success, profit, customer experience, efficiency, anything else that you want to define as your best success, orient your strategy towards that, orient your people toward that, and orient your company toward that. Determine your most critical performance drivers. I had the list of the sensitivities that we tracked on the previous page. So those are certainly places to start, but also think about other critical performance drivers and what financial supports they require. I believe that's a defining characteristic of a great entrepreneur, someone who can know, understand, develop their critical performance drivers and really focus on those. That really allows your business to have a priority, have a purpose, and have a focus for what you're doing if you can determine what those key drivers are. Your strategy should help you do that, should help you determine what your key drivers are. Lastly, the thing I want to say on this slide is your strategy needs to live and develop, and even importantly, not become stagnant or obsolete. We want to make sure that we know that. I'll talk about that. That's actually the fourth point for this presentation, but I also want to say, specifically with regard to the strategy, this needs to be a living document. This needs to grow and develop over time. Again, please send your questions to the chat so we can talk about those. Lastly, here's the topic: evaluate, revise, and refine. So this topic is the process of improvement. How do you make it just part of your DNA, your everyday operating rhythms to get better? Establish a review process on a routine basis. So that routine basis, could be monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually. I think that frequency is important. It doesn't have to be monthly necessarily, but I would say, my personal opinion, it should be at least twice a year, maybe even more than that, just depending on where you're at in your life cycle of your business. Are you still in the earlier stage growth status? So things are moving and developing quickly. Depending on your industry, same thing. Within your industry, it could be very dynamic, which means that you need to be going back and revisiting all of those things: your team, your platform, and your strategy, going back, reviewing and refining those on a routine basis, taking an objective look at all of those things. Objectivity is so critical on that. Going back to what we talked about on the team side, you need to surround yourself with people who do not think like you, because only then can you be truly objective when you have all the diversity of perspectives and opinions coming in. That's really important. So also be strategic and intentional with your process of improvement. Again, think about your business, what it takes to do and make changes and improvement on a routine basis. Do not allow any untouchables. Don't allow there to be any, sacred objects that can be untouched. We need to make sure there's certainly important things that we hold very dear, whether it might be tradition, whether it might be the way that your culture is, those kind of things. Those things are absolutely important. And I'm not saying every time you need to change everything, but make sure to step back and look at things with a critical eye to make sure that they're still aligned with everything that you're trying to do for your company. Utilize your team to provide those strong and diverse perspectives. Again, very important. Having people around you that help challenge and maybe ask questions and maybe poke holes just to make sure that we're covering everything. As always, act when necessary. Don't let inertia stop you. One thing, so banking is kind of an old line industry. We can all agree on that. It's been around for, hundreds of years. Certainly in its current form, it's probably been around, at least, in what we would call modern banking, at least 100 years. So we can be very susceptible to doing things the way we've always done them because we have such a long history. I fight against that every day, asking what is the best thing? Why do we do what we do? How can we change it and make it better? If bankers can do that, I think everybody here can do that as well. Here's the hard part for this. When we talk about evaluating, revising, refining, controlling your pace of life, the pace of your business, controlling that to give you the ability to stop and do this well. I know that, we get pulled into different things. I personally kind of make a to-do list every morning when I start, And sometimes, based on the fire drills that pop up during the day, sometimes I never touch one of those things. You get emails that come in, you get phone calls, you get texts, you get, everything, imaginable. Customers come in, issues pop up, vendor issues pop up, those kind of things. So we understand that's very hard, but we have to make sure that we control the pace of our life to go back and do this well. This is really important. Again, send your questions to the chat, please. This is what I had said kind of in my opening comments about kind of implementation. So the idea here is I want to put you in the absolute best position possible to articulate well with your capital and resource partners. Again, we will send out a list of all of those, which is actually, I think, a really strong list. And just as in all walks of life, your ability to communicate about finances is critical. So it's critical on the operational side for you to be able to communicate and articulate well, but it's also important on the financial side to be able to do that very well. The first 4 points that we talked about, so we talked about the team, we talked about the platform, we talked about the strategy, and then we talked about the process of improvement. Those 4 things, those were the tools to get you to this point. We want you to be able to articulate the following financial topics for your financial and resource partners. So those things that we want to be able to articulate very, very well. What do you need? Why do you need it? How will it be used? What is the return for you? What is the opportunity cost for not doing it? Sometimes we have to look at the downside cost. If we don't do this, what happens? Maybe a competitor gets ahead of us. Maybe our efficiency falls behind, those kind of things. You have to be able to address and articulate those well. Again, I want to have you start from a position of knowledge. I want to have you start from a position of strength. I want you to get your best results by using all of these strategies, tools, techniques, resources to put you in the best position possible when you do talk to capital partners, when you do talk to resource partners. Also, when we talk about articulating, be open to feedback. So as you speak to people, be open to what they have to say, what they're doing, and adjust accordingly. Oftentimes we see, and I see, my experience has been, we all have egos, that is both something strong, something that drives us, something that helps us reach new heights, but we also want to make sure that our egos don't get in the way of making changes, growing, developing, understanding new perspectives. We want to make sure that we want to keep that in balance. Again, the ability to articulate, I think, is another strong differentiator among entrepreneurs, and the topics in this presentation will allow you to communicate those very, very well. So get ready. We're going to fire up the chat in just a second to pull some questions down. Just in summary, let me hit a couple key points. So prioritize your finances just like you would prioritize your sales. That sounds, maybe a little out of balance, maybe something that not everybody would really lean into, but think about it like this. Our sales, absolutely, it's the lifeblood of what we do. The revenue coming in, without revenue, lots of other stuff is not going to happen, and that's going to be bad. But think about your finances as the way to help drive that, help you to become better, help you to understand your sales more, help you to be more efficient. Finances are a tool that will help you unlock your potential. Think about it like that. It's not just a necessary evil that we have to do once a year in order to get our taxes done, but how do you turn that around and make finances the tool that brings you to new heights and helps you understand your business in a much better way. Use your financial tools to make decisions and run your business to your best advantage. Help to remove the myth and the mystery about what goes on. Dig down deep, get under the hood. Using an automotive analogy, understand how all the parts of your engine work, with finance certainly being an important part of that. Again, we talked about surrounding yourself with the right people and resources. This does not mean hiring. This does not mean extra cost. There are people and organizations out there that would love to help and have the skill sets that you're looking for. Be honest with yourself and your company about any skill gaps, experience gaps that you might have. Be honest about that. And then again, to the greatest extent possible, operate from a position of strength and knowledge and actively control these things. Again, we deal with many different entrepreneurs, many different business owners, and we see a wide range of skills in this area. And what we see are those who have taken the time to kind of dig in. Not everybody has to be a CPA. Not everybody has to have an MBA. Not everybody has to have a finance degree or an accounting degree or all those things. But I think every business owner needs to understand the finances of their business, and they can do that. They absolutely can do that. And what I have seen is those that have taken the time and dug in operate from a much stronger position and are able to articulate and get better results than those who do not. So again, I mentioned it a couple times, we are going to be sending out a list of capital and economic resource providers. And then at this point, we're going to queue up the question and answer. And we will look to see what's on people's minds.
Hey, Mark, thank you very much. Again, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat room. Again, we're focusing on financial strategies. Before we proceed as well, I want you to know that this is also being recorded, and this will be available this afternoon on DPTV, Detroit Public Television's YouTube channel as well. So drop your questions in the chat room. We thank you for joining us as well, by the way. We know apparently there were just a couple of tech issues in terms of people logging in, but no problem. So a couple of questions. We got a few questions on the chat room, and let me see what we have here. So a couple, as we're thinking about the pandemic and we're thinking about the crisis, people are thinking about the plans, the financial plans, I guess. And as you think about the financial plan, should I come up with a realistic financial plan? So in other words, should I have three scenarios? One being the worst case plan, the best case plan, and the realistic financial model. As we're going through this whole pandemic to address the different scenarios. What's your response to that?
I love that question. So we are in a time of great uncertainty. We're seeing COVID numbers. They were coming down. We were doing some, having some great progress there. Then we see them come back up. That brings other questions into account as far as, are we going to go into, further levels of shutdown, those kind of things. So we see that every day, these great levels of uncertainty. So to the question, when we think about our financial plan, when we think about our forecasting, our cash flow needs, those kind of things, we absolutely should think about the different sensitivities. So Mark, you had mentioned kind of the worst case, maybe the most likely case, and maybe the best case scenario. I think it is absolutely relevant to think about all those because nobody has clarity. 6 months ago, that probably would not have been necessary because we did not have, some of the unprecedented levels of uncertainty that we have right now, the questions that are on the table, both on a macroeconomic level and also on a microeconomic level. So I think it is really important for everybody to have that skill to be able to dig in and spend the time thinking through, number one. So it's a thought process, first and foremost, but think through those things to figure out, okay, what would happen, on the downside under worst case scenarios, what would happen to my business? That is important for you to know that because then you can start to triangulate kind of what the range of possibilities is, and then you can be ready for those range of possibilities. So I think that's a great question, Mark.
Yeah, several questions are coming in to me privately through the chat room. Thank you all. Someone, by the way, clarifying, when can they watch this again? This will be on Detroit Public Television, DPTV's YouTube channel, DPTV YouTube channel, beginning this afternoon. Another question is can you please describe the updates to the PPP? Obviously a lot of discussion with respect to the PPP loans. Any update that you provide, including timelines and criteria?
Sure. So updates for that. Applications are still being accepted at various institutions for PPP loans. So the government has extended that. The original end date for that was June 30th, but that was extended. There's still money available, over 100 billion still. So there's still ample funds available for those who are interested. So that's number one. Number two, changes to it. The original timeframe for expending the funds. So when you receive funding, originally you had 8 weeks in order to spend it. What they realized, what the government realized, and through conversations with business owners, with banks, within the industry, they understood that business owners needed more time than just 8 weeks. There was still so much up in the air and so many businesses still being disrupted that the 8 weeks was not long enough. So they increased that to 24 weeks. So that's almost a full half year that you have to expend the funds. So I think that's another big and important change. Another change is 75% of the money needed to be used for payroll originally, but they realized there were some businesses that their cost structure was not as payroll heavy. So it could be rent heavy, it could be equipment heavy, those kind of things. So what they did was they still wanted to be focused on getting money into employees' hands, but they did shade that back from 75% spent on payroll back to 60%. So businesses need to spend 60% on that. And then finally, we are now getting into kind of the forgiveness phase. A lot of the companies that had gotten funding earlier on are now reaching the point where they're working through their forgiveness on that. So that's going to be really important. That was, really a key feature of this program initially for businesses is you can go out, get this, PPP loan, and then at some point later on, assuming that all the funds have been used the way they were intended and the way that the program works, then that loan could be forgiven. We are starting that process right now. The banking industry, and I can say, we here at Fifth Third Bank, we're still working with the SBA. There's, many tweaks and changes even on a daily basis from the SBA on that. But we are getting very, very close to our system where the borrowers can actually go in and apply for their forgiveness directly through their own portal. So those are kind of some of the key updates for PPP.
Okay. Another question is, can you suggest a frequency a business owner should perform on all cash flow analysis for a business?
Sure. I would say this. So it's going to be a little different for the businesses. I mentioned earlier that depending on your business, maybe the life cycle that you're in, if it's, a startup that's going through, strong growth phases and growing and developing, maybe that should be, even for, and the question specifically is on a cash flow basis. So maybe that could be, every week. It could be every other week. That certainly is a time frame. Given the current circumstances, as we are in, COVID and various levels of shutdown, and, I know certainly we're talking here in Southeast Michigan, this is where I live. I'm, in my office in Detroit right now. So we're talking about that, but Fifth Third Bank also operates over a wider footprint in many states. And what we see is, and we see nationally, many states are at different levels of their reopening plan, and some of them are at different levels of their re-locking down plan. So my point there is, as things change, it is very important to go back and revisit, because every plan is just based on a certain level of underlying assumptions. And when we see that those assumptions are really being impacted in a dynamic way, literally tomorrow can be different than today. Literally this afternoon can be different than this morning. I think we need to be very flexible. We need to be agile to make sure to go back and revisit that. So under those circumstances, I think, revisiting cash flow plans, again, it could be a week or two. I would say under no circumstance would it be, more than a month. And at this point, what we counsel our business owners on is to, even do it more than once a month, but under no circumstance more than a month at this time.
Okay. And as you go through that financial review, for example, the analysis that you're discussing and the timelines, it begs the question again. Let's kind of hone in on this pandemic. And other questions come in as it relates to, I've gone through my financial analysis. I realize I have a gap, for example. What's the difference? I'm trying to determine if I should get a loan versus a grant. So what is the difference, Mark, between a loan versus a grant? And what's best for my business? How do I determine that?
Sure. So I would say this, dollar for dollar, grants are usually better because you don't have to pay those back. Loans, you do have to pay back. So that would be one difference, but you have to dig into the specifics, because each of those programs is going to have requirements. It's going to have criteria. If there is a grant program that can provide you what you need, if you meet the criteria, if what you do is a qualifying use of it, then I think a grant would absolutely be the way to go. Again, I just want to say that the list of organizations that we're going to be sending out, some are focused more on lending, some are focused more on grants, some are focused more on maybe equity injection, those kind of things. So understand, it's very important to understand who you're talking to and what you're talking about, and make sure that you understand all the criteria up front, the qualifying criteria, but then also make sure that you understand the terms and conditions on an ongoing basis with that. So the short answer is dollar for dollar, grants don't have to be repaid. That's good. But they may not be specifically targeted to what your need is. So it's very important to know and operate from a position of strength and knowledge when you talk about those things.
And we know that Detroit, Metro Detroit, the state, a lot of people, we talk about small businesses, we're talking about brick and mortar and offering a tangible product, for example. But let's kind of segue into services, the service industry, and offering pricing in terms of, let's say, for example, you're a consultant. What are considerations that you should take into account if you're trying to price your service, for example, for clients, as opposed to a traditional product, a can of pop, for example, versus intellectual property? What are some of the considerations that you need to think about as you're looking at pricing those services versus a product, particularly, again, as we're going through this whole pandemic and the crisis and navigating those headwinds?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. And so much of what we do and so much of, where we're moving, as an economy, particularly here in Southeast Michigan, manufacturing will always be an important part of what we do. Making goods and services, that's a bit of the DNA of not only, Detroit, but the state of Michigan and even, this region of the country. So that's really important. But Mark, your question about the intellectual property, those kind of things, how do you price it? So number one, think about your time. How much time will be available? Make sure that you provide a very clear scope of services to make sure that you and your potential client know exactly what you are doing, what you're not doing, what the time frames are. Think about the hours that you put in. Maybe there's some kind of cap on that. Think about if you have to go out and get third-party services involved. Whether it's additional help, additional people involved. Maybe you need to go out and get some additional products or services in order to deliver whatever it is that you're delivering to your client. So understand those indirect costs, those third-party costs, those kind of things. For you, from a pricing standpoint, also think about the opportunity cost. As you look at opportunity A or B or C, maybe if you went with opportunity A, then you would not have the time or the bandwidth to also pursue the opportunity B and opportunity C. That's an opportunity cost. Maybe it would be better for you in your business to go for B and C, but not A. When I was at the private company, I worked for a very successful entrepreneur. It's actually in the building material distribution industry. Again, very successful, was absolutely the industry leader in Michigan for what he did. Just a great experience for me. He had a great way of making very deep and complex principles simple. And one of the things that he said, and this I think pertains to this particular question, is sometimes the most profitable word in the English language is no. And that, on the face of it, we always want to say yes, yes to the sale, yes to this, yes to that, we always want to do that. But think through it. If you have an opportunity that's going to completely box you out from doing other things, maybe that's not the right thing to do. So sometimes the right answer is to say no. So anything else on that question? Any other facet that you want to cover on that, Mark?
No, I think, again, as we're continuing to move into the service industry, I know a lot of people will ask me, because they know what I do, is how do I handle pricing, for example, my various products and services. But I think it's interesting to hear from your perspective, as a banker, things that you might be looking for, the advice and counsel that you can give to those individuals, because we know that our economy, particularly in Michigan, in Metro Detroit, continues to diversify away. Manufacturing has always been our core business, so it will continue to be down the road, but we know that many entrepreneurs are looking to get into the service industry. So I really wanted, I appreciate you answering that question, Mark. Um, and also other questions, please drop them in before we wrap up. We have a few more minutes, and Jennifer will provide us with an overview of next week's session as well. But as you think about, the pricing, people talk about break-even points versus a pricing for profit. What is the difference between pricing to break even? What costs are you trying to cover with your break even versus pricing to make a profit? And how do I determine, the pricing strategy best for my business in terms of profitability?
Sure. So pricing to break even, number one, take a step back. I said this and I was trying to make a big deal about it. Hopefully it came across as a big deal because it is really a big deal. Understand your costs. First and foremost, understand your costs. And those costs are direct costs. So the actual dollars it takes, to provide your good, your service, your product, those are a little bit, easier to think about. Again, from a manufacturing standpoint, you're making, parts for the automotive industry, when you have to go to your supplier, when the bill comes due, so you can see that cost. That's a direct cost that goes into there. You see the labor that goes into it. That's a direct cost. You know what your hourly rate is, what you pay your employees. So that is also a direct cost. The machines it takes to make that, those are direct costs. So those are pretty easy. What we want to also make sure is that we capture the indirect costs as well. So the indirect costs, the ones, that maybe not necessarily directly tied to that physical product directly, but it could be overhead. It could be, a bookkeeper. It could be your rent. It could be taxes. It could be benefits that you're providing for your employees. So think through all the costs. It could be sales costs, customer acquisition costs. How much does it cost for you to bring a customer to your doorstep, whether it's virtually or physically? What does that cost? So think through all of the things that are costs, whether directly or indirectly. And then, Mark, specifically to your question is, once you have a firm grasp of what your costs are, both direct and indirect, then you can make those pricing decisions on how you can price, whether it's a break-even analysis, and we want to shoot for more than break even. What we want to do, we want to make sure that we create a return for ourselves, in those areas. But maybe there are times where you do want to break even. Maybe it's, a new customer that you want to get your foot in the door so you can go in and sell, those kind of things. But you have to start from a position of knowledge in order to do that well.
I love that point of difference, because if you're talking about breaking even, for those of us listening and those of us viewing via the YouTube channel as well, the cost to acquire a new customer certainly is higher than the cost to retain an existing customer. So you're going to have to take potentially some additional resources and invest those resources into acquiring a new customer. So you really need to understand your strategy, your business strategy in terms of growth. And it's really we've entitled this series "Navigating the Headwinds of Crisis," and the reason that this conversation is important, Mark, is that now, some people have not reopened their businesses. And, I know the governor is speaking later today. She's going to be providing an update again. And now is a good time to go back, Mark. Would you agree to reassess your business model, reassess your financial model? In other words, don't sit back during this pandemic and really do nothing, but really it's an opportunity for you to go back and reassess your business at large. Fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've heard people saying that. I don't think it's unique to any one person. And I don't say this flippantly, because this, particularly this crisis, number one, it is it's a medical crisis. It's a health crisis, and people are getting sick, and many people are dying from this. So I don't want to at all sugarcoat that. That is, from a human perspective, that's the most important thing. From a business perspective, I've heard people, again, it's not unique to any one person, I don't think, but from a business perspective, I've heard people say, I don't want to waste a good crisis. And what they're saying, Mark, exactly what you just said, take this opportunity with this disruption, go back, review. We're talking about financial strategies and financial plans today. That was, kind of the topic, but even broader than that, go back and look at your overall strategy, look at your team, look at what you're doing, look at how you do it, those kind of things. in these times of disruption, really great thinkers, really great operators, they go back and they take those opportunities to do that. So I think, this is really a golden moment to do that.
Okay, and before I turn it over to Jennifer, any contact information or website for Fifth Third where people can go get more information about the programs and financial programs that are being made available as well?
Oh, certainly. So at 53.com, which is our corporate website, please go there. We have links not only for individuals, but also for businesses. Please, reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. We have an entire team of professionals. And again, Mark, I want to say this, as a presenting sponsor for the Small Business Workshop, again, you put on an absolute clinic for making a big pivot and navigating the headwinds of crisis. So not only, in your own business, but also in this workshop, you've done a great job in doing that. We're really, proud of being part of that. All of our professionals, and within our business banking team, we have about 25 professionals in East Michigan who are ready, willing, and able. And we work on it every single day to be the partner that everybody needs us to be. That's really important to us. So I want to thank everybody for this opportunity. Hopefully I was able to add something. So this is something I'm very passionate about, something that, I've seen people do really, really well. And I've seen people that have had some opportunity to improve here. And hopefully, I can be part of that improvement. Thank you to everybody.
Okay, and before we go, Mark, if you could drop in the chat room the website one more time as well. And I'm going to turn over to Jennifer. I know there have been a couple of questions about direct links. I know we will be sending out information, attachment information. I'll have Jennifer go through those details and also next week's session. Mark, I want to thank you very much for your time and we appreciate your insights. Jennifer?
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. And thanks, Mark Baker, as well, for your presentation today. I think it was insightful. I did note a few questions. It looks like they just came through. So after I give my information about our next session that's coming up, if we have a minute, perhaps we can even revert back to that potentially. For all of our attendees, thanks so much for your time today and joining. We hope that you also found value in it. So as you're aware, this has been an ongoing series where we've addressed a multitude of topics related to reopening and managing your business in this evolving time. So our next session that we have coming up is next Wednesday, July 22nd. Ivana Kalafatic will be our presenter for that session. And she's going to discuss leadership and communication skills during these evolving times that would relate directly to managing your business. So things that would include your communication, developing your strategy, working with your clients, supporting your employees. How do you incorporate your leadership skills into all of those elements? So it's going to be a really interesting topic. Certainly will encompass a lot of what we've already reviewed on our previous sessions. But again, the entire intent of this series has been to be cohesive and to build upon each topic. So we look forward to everybody's participation and attendance. Certainly, please continue to promote and invite others. We welcome as many attendees as would be interested in joining. But thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. Mark, I'll head back to you in case you want to address any of those questions that came through.
And before we go, thank you, Jennifer. One final question from Mark, this is back to you real quick. Are there any current business grants available? Any current business grants available to your knowledge?
Yeah, so we're going to send out a link to all those organizations. There are, probably more than, I could just list here. And I don't want to just throw out one name because it might or might not fit everybody here. So I don't want to, steer anybody, down a path that maybe is not their best path. But with the list of organizations that have not only financial resources available, grants, loans, maybe equity investments, those kind of things, but also look at that list for other economic resource partners, again, for the counseling, for the guidance, for the other resources, marketing, sales, those kind of things. So look at those. So that's not really answering the question. So the short answer is yes. Any current business grants available? Yes. But look through that list and talk to those organizations because there are definitely economic development funds available from many sources within the community right now.
Outstanding. All right, I want to take this time to wrap this up, and I want to thank Mark Baker. I want to thank Fifth Third Bank for certainly their insights into today's discussion. I hope you found it to be very helpful. One more time, this session will be available this afternoon. You can go to DPTV, as in Detroit Public Television, DPTV's YouTube channel, and feel free to share with as many people as you want. We want as many people to get this information as possible. We've been getting some great views on the first couple of workshops. So again, the next workshop will be next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Registration is now open. You can go to leadgroupinnovation.com. That's leadgroupinnovation.com. Click on Small Business Workshop. All right, with that said, go out and make it a great day, make it a great week, and we'll see you next week at the Small Business Workshop focused on safe, continue to focus on safe and reopening. Go out and make it a great day. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.